Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Diana Matthews. I am a professor and librarian at the Lawrence W. Tyree Library at Santa Fe College, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Google and how you can use Google for your research. I know that probably most of the people at Santa Fe have been using Google for a while, but there's a lot of interesting tips and tricks to help you get some better information. So that's what we're going to go over today. So by the end of the webinar, you should be able to use some specific Google syntax to limit your search results, as well as apply some evaluation criteria to web resources to make sure that you're getting some good information. So first, I would be remiss as a librarian if I don't talk about how Google is not a one-stop shop. Google has an amazing amount of information in it, but Google is part of what's called the surface web. And by some accounts, the surface web only accounts for about 2% of all the information on the internet, which means that Google itself can possibly only have about 2% of everything that is out there, which is pretty crazy if you think about it. Most of the stuff on the internet are locked behind paywalls, login screens, other types of maybe they aren't even linked to, and that's called the deep web. So first of all, it's very important to realize that Google does not have everything. And so Google, I find, is very useful for finding some government information when you have popular culture that you need to find out about. It's great for news and current events. There is a rising amount of open access scholarship, which means that researchers are publishing open access articles. And so you can find those through Google. Statistics and reports, all of these are great for using Google to find. Now, on the other hand, we do have library databases, which are probably better choices if you're looking for certain things. So first of all, if you need a full-text magazine, journal, or newspaper articles, it's usually better to start with the library databases. And that's because although there are open access articles out there, most of the time when you're on Google, the full-text articles are going to be locked behind a paywall. They're going to want you to pay to read it. And during your time, especially here at Santa Fe, you should never be paying to read articles. The library databases have millions of them that are full text. Library databases are also a good place to go for scholarly and research articles because it does give you the option to limit to those. Most library database interfaces have a very easy little checkbox that you can check to say that you want scholarly or peer-reviewed articles. Whereas in Google, you're going to have to evaluate what you find to figure out if it's scholarly or peer-reviewed or not. Library databases also excel when it comes to historical information. The internet really got started in a popular way for consumers in the 90s. It did exist before that, but really the 90s is when things started going online. And so a lot of the information you're going to find doesn't go further back than the 90s, although there have been some historical efforts to digitize things. But library databases are going to contain a lot more historical information so that you can get that. And finally, one of the benefits of the library databases is you know that what you're going to find is more reliable and more credible, mostly because these things have been published in print before and have gone through a review process. With Google, it is the Wild West out there. Anyone can publish anything. There's no proof that you need to have any sort of credentials to claim something. As we all know, there's fake news out there, tons of clickbait. And so it can take a little bit to wade through what is good and what isn't. And so for that reason, the library databases can be very useful in that when you search in them, you're going to know that it is good information. All right, so with that caveat, let's dive into Google. Let's start learning some interesting tricks that might help you out. All right, so in Google, Google has a very sophisticated algorithm where it is going to try to figure out what you're actually searching for, and it's going to disregard words that it thinks is not important. So in Google, you can put entire questions, you can put sentences, but I like to pick out the main keywords of what I'm searching for because it kind of helps Google along. By telling Google these are my main keywords, it's going to do a slightly better job matching up results. So for today, my topic is going to be about gene editing of mosquitoes. Everyone hates mosquitoes. They are very annoying. For me, I get lots of bites whenever I go outside and they are very itchy. But mosquitoes also are one of the leading causes of the spread of certain diseases like malaria. And so there's been some talk about can we edit the genes of mosquitoes to prevent that? And so this is my topic today. So I could type things in like, should we gene edit mosquitoes? How can we edit the genes of mosquitoes to prevent the spread of malaria? Again, the more words you put in, the more Google has to try to interpret that. And like I said, they're pretty good, but we want to just be sure that we get what we're interested in. So I'm going to type gene editing and then mosquitoes. So these are my two main concepts. I want the gene editing of mosquitoes. And by putting those kind of keywords in, I'm helping Google figure out what's most important. All right, so one of the benefits of Google is it has a lot of information to look through. It's getting about 600,000 results. For this results, the first part is going to be these scholarly articles. And when you click on that, it's going to take you to Google Scholar, which is Google's attempt to try to make like a library database sort of. They're gathering lots of information about different articles and other academic research that's been published. However, Google Scholar is not 100% full text. A lot of times you're not going to be able to read the full text of the articles that you find here. There are ways for you to connect it to Santa Fe College's library databases so that if we have it in our databases, there'll be a link for you. That is found under the settings. We do have a video tutorial about that if you would like to learn how to do that. That is on our library website. If you go to guides and then click the tutorials at the top, that will take you to the Google Scholar tutorial. And we also have a workshop coming up about Google Scholar in, I think, the next 2 weeks. So this part up here where it says scholarly articles, it's going to be these Google Scholar results. Now, Google also usually has a kind of spotlight result. They call it a featured snippet. And so this one is from CNN, and it's talking about gene editing could eliminate mosquitoes. Other results are down here. We see that there's one from nature.com, synthago.com, sciencenewsforstudents.org. So in Google results, the title is in blue, and then right above it in black is information about what website it came from. Okay, so there's going to be probably about 10 results. They also have what people also search for, and then searches related to your search in case you wanted to change that. And then you can go to the next page down here. And I do find that a lot of people don't even go to the next page. We have first page results syndrome, but it is worth looking through a couple of pages as you are looking through your research. Okay, so how can we possibly make our search better? One thing we can do if we want to make sure that we keep a phrase together is we can put it in quotation marks. So you can see here I have gene editing in quotation marks. This means I need this phrase, gene editing, to stay together. I don't want it to get separated at all. So you can see, for instance, in this result here, it has gene highlighted, but then there's drive. So it's possible that there's gene somewhere and there's editing somewhere else. So by putting it in quotation marks, we're saying, hey, don't separate this at all. And so when I do that, I am now down to 207 results. I need to be careful though, because what if they call it genetic editing? If I do that, 24,000 results. So you have to be careful when you put things in quotation marks. You need to be sure that you're only using a very common phrase. You typically only want to use about 2 words or so. You don't want to put an entire question in quotation marks because it's quite possible that people say things in a slightly different way than you might. And you don't want to eliminate all of those results just because they say things slightly differently. So that's one thing that you can do to take care of your results. Another thing you can do is you can eliminate some results. So maybe I don't want any information about malaria. I'm interested in gene editing of mosquitoes, but I'm not interested in the malaria aspect. I can put this minus sign, it's a hyphen, and then the word that I don't want. But look really carefully. The hyphen is right next to the word. There's no space there. It's like it's all one word itself. It's very important to do that. If there's a space, this is not going to work. But if I do minus malaria, I am now down to 104,000 results, and none of these results should have the word malaria in it. Again, this is something you want to be careful about because it's quite possible that there could have been some very good articles or results about gene editing mosquitoes that don't focus on malaria, but they maybe mention, oh, and there's other things going on to eliminate malaria as well. So this is another one that you want to use very, very carefully. But it can be very useful if you're getting things that are not at all what you are looking for. So going back to our main search, just let's do gene editing in quotation marks mosquitoes. As we are looking through a lot of these results, I'm not entirely sure which websites are good websites. I have heard of nature.com. They're a pretty good website. They are a publisher of a very well-renowned journal called Nature. I've never heard of synthago.com, so I don't know if this is a good reliable source or not. ScienceNewsForStudents.org sounds promising. It sounds like they're going to be doing science news for students based on their website, but I'm not entirely sure. So a lot of these that you're going to see are .org and .com URLs. .org and .com are what's called open domains. So anybody can register a website with a .com and a .org. There's no limits. And so you don't have to prove that you're a reliable source to do that. .org just simply means that you're a nonprofit organization, and nonprofit organizations don't have to reach any sort of standard. They can be biased. They can put out things that are incorrect. They can try to sway you to their side. Looking at things overall, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, has a .org website. Obviously, they're very biased when it comes to gun control and gun rights. On the other side, PETA, the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, is also a .org site, and they have a mission for animal rights, but also in a lot of other ways, like that you should be eating vegetarian, you shouldn't have pets, all sorts of other things that they espouse. And so this is on a .org website. So you have to really carefully look at each of these results to see whether it's something that's good or not. I am going to go through some evaluation criteria with you in a little bit, but in the meantime, one thing you can do to get some better results is to limit to government or educational sites. So at the end of my search in Google, I can put cite:/gov to limit to government sites. You can see that, again, the cite:/gov has no spaces in it. It's all one word. Again, if you put a space at any point, if you put a space after the colon or before the colon, it's not going to work. Um, but by saying cite colon gov, we are telling Google to only limit to results from government sites. The .gov site is a regulated, restricted domain. That means that only government entities can have that URL. They're the only ones that can have .gov. It's mostly federal government, but you will sometimes see local governments like states or even counties sometimes. Although the official Florida website is on a .com. It is myflorida.com. Okay, so these results here, we've added the cite colon gov. And now all of our results are going to come from a .gov website. So a lot of these are going to be from this ncbi.nlm.nih.gov, and it's going to have PMC. What this means is it's from an open database called PubMed. PubMed is basically a repository for all research that's been done using public funds within the sciences and the medical fields. And all these things mean that it's part of the National Institute of Health, the National Library of Medicine, and the National Center for Biotechnology Information. Just interesting. So not everything in PubMed is full text. If you go to some of these results, sometimes you'll see it. So this one does look like it is full text, but sometimes it'll only give you an abstract. If you are trying to find any articles that are not full text online, just ask a librarian. We are happy to help out. There's going to be a lot of contact information at the end of this webinar. So just shoot us an email or a chat saying, hey, I'm looking for the full text of this article. So some of the other things that we're going to see is from the cdc.gov, which is the Centers for Disease Control. Oh, and it looks like it's actually forwarding us to something else, the statnews.com. That's interesting. NSF.com, the National Science Foundation, I believe, EPA.gov, Environmental Protection Agency, USDA, Congress.gov. So all of these are government websites. And the site.gov is really good when you're looking for statistics because they're often the repository of official statistics. The other thing you can do is cite edu, which is going to limit to educational institutions. And this is usually colleges and universities, although a very, very, very small amount could be like a school district, a K through 12 school district. You don't see that too often. One of the nice things about this is a lot of times universities have research centers and they will publish their research or at least summarize it, or they will give information that is useful. A lot of times they'll be publishing news about what their professors are finding in their research. So you can see here that Duke University is reporting about how gene editing could eliminate mosquitoes, but is it a good idea? A lot of stuff here, the gene drive dilemma. Gene knockout using new CRISPR tool makes mosquitoes something. Genetically modified mosquitoes may be the best weapon for something. So you're seeing things from Berkeley, North Carolina State University, University of South Florida, Cornell. Ooh, that is a little difficult to read. But here is the one from the Cornell Alliance for Science, which is nice because it's actually giving you some good information and good graphics about the gene drive. So you can also limit to specific things. Like if you wanted to only limit to Cornell's website, you could do citecornell.edu. So you can go a little bit more specific if you would like. This is useful if you remember seeing something on a certain website, but their search result or their search function is not working well, so you can limit that. Okay, so that's how you can kind of limit things coming from a certain area. One other thing that can sometimes be helpful, especially if you're looking for reports, is to limit things to PDFs. So in this case, you can type file type :PDF. And again, all one word, file type :PDF, no spaces in there. When you do that, you're only going to get PDF results. And you can see in these results, it has this little box that says PDF. A lot of times these are going to be reports or articles that you can read in the PDF format. So here's this one here. You can technically do this for other things as well. If you want to do a file type of DOC to find a Word document, that's a little less useful. There's not as many Word documents uploaded to the web, but something you can keep in mind. You can do any sort of file type here. Now, one thing that is very useful with Google is how much you can actually do in this bar besides just searching for things. If you don't know what CRISPR is, the define, if you put the word define, and then you put a word, it'll bring up their little dictionary area, which is a nice quick area figuring out what something is. As well as if you just have mostly one word or one concept, it's going to bring this little highlighted box on the right that will give you a link to something, which is usually Wikipedia to let you know what it is. And while Wikipedia is great for background information, you don't want to actually use it as your source in your papers. And then they'll sometimes bring important people, like you can see these are CRISPR scientists and CRISPR companies. So I'm going to search for just CRISPR by itself now. And let's say that we want to find some images. So if you're doing a PowerPoint about gene editing of mosquitoes and you want to discuss CRISPR, when you do a search in Google, there is the ability to limit to what type of sources you get. So the default of all is everything they have. You can limit to newspaper articles if you want to see what's happening, or news articles. Videos, which will also include YouTube now because Google does own YouTube. But they'll have videos from other sites as well, including videos on certain pages. So these are some videos about CRISPR explained. What is CRISPR? Could be very good to look at. And then the images, which is going to show images related to your search term. So any of these that you click, it's going to bring a little bit bigger on the right. It's going to tell you where it's from, and it's going to give you the ability to go there. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that just because something appears in the search does not mean you can copy and paste it and use it. Everything on the internet should be assumed to be copyrighted unless it specifically says it's not. So by just copying and pasting, you are breaking copyright law. There is a really cool tool within Google, though, that helps you find things that you can use. So once you've done a search in Google Images, there's this little tools button right underneath the search box toward the right. And if you click tools, under usage rights, it lets you find things that are labeled for reuse. And so anything that are labeled for reuse, you can use without needing to pay the person or ask permission. So you can use any of these links, or these images, sorry. Very useful if you're making web pages, and then something to keep in mind as you are doing PowerPoints and other visual presentations. There are some other cool things in here as well. You can change the size to be large, Color, you can see if you want black and white, or you can want to find things with a certain main color. Under type, you can look for clip art or line drawings or even GIFs. And then time will show things that have been uploaded within the past 24 hours, week, month, or year. So going back to Google and then clicking the images up top, this is another quick way to get to Google Images. Google Images can also be used to help you investigate an image. So I think most of us have seen this image before of a shark swimming on what appears to be a highway. Looks like it's right next to a car because you can see this, this mirror right here. And this one seems to pop up every time there's a major hurricane or tropical storm in the United States. So Google Images has what's called a reverse image search, which is nice because it lets you figure out where an image came from, or where it's been used. You can save it to your computer, or if you can get this image URL, which you can see up here, an image URL will end with a image type, so like a JPG, a GIF, a PNG, something like that. So I'm going to copy that image. And then in Google Images, there is this camera icon. When you do that, this lets you either upload an image on your computer or paste a URL. And it's going to search for that image and see where else it can find it. So when I look at that, I'm going to see immediately that there's a USA Today article that says that shark photo is fake. Texas floods, the freeway shark, and other fake news. Why do hoaxes go viral? So you can see that it's pretty probably pretty clear that this is a fake photo. But this can also be used to help find miscaptioned photos. A lot of times people will take a real photo but miscaption it and put it in a new context. And so that is something that you want to be aware of. And if you are interested, you can always look it up. If you're using the Google browser, you can usually right-click an image, and I don't know whether you can see my right-click or not, but there'll be an option to search Google for image, and when you click that, it will automatically search for it. All right, so those are a few tips and tricks for kind of increasing your search results to be to have more relevant results in Google. Let's discuss how we can evaluate what we find. Oh, so just a quick recap. We put things, a common phrase in quotation marks. You can do cite:/edu or cite:/gov to limit to educational or government sites. You can use the minus sign to eliminate a word. And then that file type :PDF can limit to PDF results. All right, so one question you always want to ask yourself is it crap? What you're finding online, is it crappy? And this is an acronym for currency, relevancy, authority, accuracy, and purpose. And so each of these criteria, if you ask yourself questions, can help you determine whether you have found something that's reliable, authoritative, and that would be good for academic research. So if you're just looking up, reviews of a movie for your own personal use, should you go see a movie or not, it's fine for you to just see what's out there and read through it. But if you're doing research for any college level assignment, you want to be absolutely sure that what you're finding is appropriate for college level research. And that does eliminate a lot of what is out there on the web. So our first question is about currency. So you should always try to figure out, when was this information published or created? How old is it? Sometimes things get put online and then they die there. And it's never updated. So you're thinking that you're using good information, but it's been completely, they've completely revamped things and everything's a lot different. If they're citing sources, how current are those sources? Are they only citing really old sources? That might mean that they're using outdated information and coming to outdated conclusions. Are those links still functional within the page? Is the website being maintained? It might be a forgotten page. And then, does your topic require current information, or will older sources work as well? So if you're doing research on gene editing, you probably want to find things within the past 5 years or so, probably more recent if possible. You don't want to find things from the very beginning when they were trying to figure things out. But if you're doing research on Shakespeare, older sources might still be okay. Different different looks at the symbolism of Hamlet, it's maybe not going to be too different. So it's okay if you have older results. But currency can be very important in certain fields, medical, scientific, and sometimes even like social sciences when it comes to psychology. There's been a lot of changes in with the publication of the DSM-5, which is sort of the Bible of psychology and psychiatry, different diagnoses and different criteria as to what might be appropriate for diagnosing certain things. So currency is very important to look at. A lot of times, though, when you're online, there's not going to be a specific date. If you find an article or a blog, it will. So if you're not entirely sure when it was published or created, this is where you want to look at these other questions, especially about the website. Is it being maintained? Are they citing certain sources, and how current are those? The next question to ask is relevance. Is it relevant to your topic? But there's other questions as well. So who is the intended audience? Is this for children? If it is for children, it is probably not something you want to include in your paper. But also, is it intended for like the general public? A lot of times these very general websites might not be the best choice for a paper. It's very useful for you figuring out something, but you're probably going to want to aim for things that are the audiences, researchers, scholars, and people within the field if possible. You want to make sure that the information you find is in depth enough to actually give you some information. If you found a page that's one paragraph, that's probably not enough. You probably need to find something that's more in depth. Very important, does it actually relate to your topic or answer your question? It is funny sometimes how people will find something that absolutely contradicts what they are trying to argue, but they'll include it anyway. So you don't want to find things that are contradicting what you're trying to argue. You don't want to find things that are not answering your question at all. And then this one, again, relates to that first page syndrome in Google. Have you looked at a variety of sources before determining this is one you will use? If you do a search and the very first result looks good and you're like, okay, I'm done, you haven't necessarily done a full research process. You have not examined what else is out there. So you should definitely look through a few things before deciding exactly what will be most useful for you. Our next criteria is authority. So a lot of this has to do with the author and why they are qualified to write about this. So who is the author? What are their credentials? Interestingly enough, even if someone has a PhD or is a professor in one area, they might not be qualified to write about other things. There's an example of a engineering professor somewhere in Florida, I forget exactly where, who is an ardent Holocaust denier, and he writes about that a lot. And even though he's a professor, his training is in engineering, which has absolutely nothing to do with the Holocaust. So his credentials in that sphere are not sufficient. Beyond just the author, look at the publisher and the source, who's sponsoring it. Um, I remember at one time there was a website about what we call mad cow disease. It's, I think, bovine spongiform encephalopathy. And it was all about how it's not really a big deal, it's okay, but it was sponsored by the national beef industry. So they probably have a vested interest in telling you that it is not a big deal and it's okay. And it might be true, but you should find some sources that are outside these sort of sponsored kind of biased sites. And so again, this goes into what are the author's credentials or where are they affiliated with? Why are they someone that you would trust to write about something? When you're looking at the URL, does it reveal anything about the author or source? You know, if it's a .gov or .edu, that tells you a little bit about something. If it's from, PETA.org, look up what PETA is and find out what their stance is on things. Accuracy is very important, obviously. We don't want incorrect information. So you need to figure out, where does this information come from? Are they looking at a research study they did? Are they reporting on something that's happening? Is it an opinion piece that they're writing? Where are they getting their information? Does this information make sense? If you look at it, are you like, oh yeah, that makes sense? Or is it something that you're like, whoa, 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 what is this? So the common sense check can be very powerful, actually. And you also want to think about what it is that they're trying to do, and we're going to talk about that a little bit in the last criteria. But as you're looking about it, does it make sense? Does it make sense for what they're trying to do? The information they give, do they support it with evidence, or do they just say, oh yeah, this, without citing anything, without giving any sort of outside evidence? If the information has been reviewed or refereed, that's great. So like a peer-reviewed journal, that is kind of the highest amount of accuracy because it has been reviewed by other people to make sure there aren't any issues. You're rarely going to see this in sort of open web pages or blogs, but sometimes things like, for instance, I think WebMD, they have their articles reviewed by physicians, which gives you a nice information that it has been reviewed. And can you verify any of the information in another source? It's never a good idea to just use one source and to trust it. Make sure that you can find that information somewhere else. Or if you personally know it, for instance, if you are really big into training horses and you personally know that certain things work and you finding something on horse training, then that's a good source. And then look for spelling, grammar, or typographical errors. If someone is careless enough to leave multiple egregious spelling or grammar errors up, they probably are not careful enough to make sure that they are using good information, that they're drawing the right conclusions, etc. If you're reading something from someone where English is not their first language, you can be a little forgiving of that. But in other sources, these should sort of be a red flag that they're not being careful in their creation of this source. All right, so purpose is our last one. And this is very important. What is the purpose of this information? Is it to inform, teach, sell, entertain, or persuade? So it's really important to find things where they want to inform you and inform you neutrally, or teach you. There's a lot of pages out there where maybe they're going to talk about the benefits of apple cider vinegar, for instance. and there happens to be a link up top where you can buy their apple cider vinegar products. So they probably are not going to tell you anything about how apple cider vinegar may be harmful. I don't know if it is or not, but if there was something, or maybe how apple cider vinegar does not do the things that they claim it's going to do. So anytime you see a commercial interest, you should really have your red flags up and look at it very carefully. Things that are meant to entertain or persuade you should also be looked at very suspiciously, especially if they're trying to arouse some strong emotions in you. Anything where they're going to be trying to make you angry, like when you read that headline, you're like, oh my gosh, that is so terrible. I am so upset right now. Or if they're trying to persuade you to something, you're going to want to really look at the rest of the criteria to decide whether it's something you should use. Ideally, things that are used for academic research, you should find things that are neutral in tone, that are just there to inform and to report on the research. It really shouldn't be entertaining, and most of the time you should not really be using things where they're trying to persuade you on things. We talked about knowing the authors and the sponsors. Is it clear what they're trying to do? If they're kind of hiding the information about what their purpose is, that also can make that information suspect. Think about whether it is fact, opinion, or propaganda. What this information they're giving, is it just straight up fact? Are they giving their opinions? Are they trying to persuade you with things with propaganda? Does it appear to be objective and impartial? Look at the words they're using and their arguments. See if it does appear to be very neutral. Again, is there a commercial or organizational interest associated with the site? Are they trying to convince you something because of, it's the NRA? Most of their stuff is not going to say anything about how gun violence might be an issue. They're going to be downplaying that, or possibly going the other way, saying that, owning guns leads to less violence. I don't know. And yeah, so as I was saying before, does it seem to be designed to provoke strong emotions? If it is trying to make you angry, use a different source. All right, so it is sometimes very difficult to wade through Google. And so if you're ever not sure, you're looking for things, you found a website, you're not sure whether it's something you should use, or you have found information about an article, but you only see the abstract, you can't read the full text without paying for it, you can ask librarians to help. So even though we are currently physically closed, the building is physically closed during the COVID-19 pandemic, all the librarians are still working from home, and we are monitoring all of the different methods of communication. So one of the easiest things you can do is just shoot us an email. Email us at reference@sfcollege.edu. You can give us a call. When you call this number, you're going to need to leave a message, but then we will return your call. And then if you go to our website, there's a button called Research Help, and that will give you more methods of contacting us, including being able to drop into our Zoom room, use our chat service, and a number that you can text a question to us. And so we are available all week. We're available Monday through Friday. And so you can always ask us any questions about online resources, even citing them if you're not sure how to cite them. If you're really interested in becoming a better Googler, we do have a 1-credit online class that's taught in a mini-semester format, so typically A or B term. And that is LIS 2004. It's called Internet Research. And I informally call it the Super Google class, which is where the name of this workshop came from. And so it's going to really dive in depth into the types of information you find online, how to improve your search with those different limits that we were looking at, how to evaluate. It's going to go more into Google Scholar, as well as searching for images and videos as well. So if you're interested in that, you can register for that through eSanta Fe. It's nice because, again, it is 1 credit, so it might be useful in filling out your schedule. Okay, so that is that is our workshop. Again, ask us any questions that you may have, and good luck as you research.